Hey everybody! So today I want to touch on the subject of weddings and funerals. And I'm going to title this episode 4 Weddings and a Funeral because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about 4 weddings that happened in the Kingdom Hall or not in the Kingdom Hall and a funeral. I know I've touched a little bit on this subject matter before, but there's a little bit to elaborate, and I have another story that I haven't told that I was waiting to tell, and I'm going to start out with that story. Jehovah's Witnesses are very, very strict when it comes to the subject matter of weddings in the Kingdom Hall. And one of the things, you got to give credit where there's credit due. But one of the things I always liked is that while churches in the world charge you to have a wedding at their church, the Kingdom Hall is free for all to use. That's what they say. That's like their big thing, like everybody can use the Kingdom Hall. And I loved that. I thought, okay, so if you get married, you can have it in the Kingdom Hall free of charge. You don't pay the elder that holds your wedding talk. Or in turn also for funerals, it's free of charge to use the Kingdom Hall for a funeral. The elder doesn't get paid. And I liked that. I thought, well, look at us. We're doing everything because we have so much love and we do it out of volunteer reasons. And what we don't realize is there's a million strings attached to this because the rules and regulations with weddings and funerals are so tight, and I guess we've just always accepted it as Jehovah's Witnesses, just like we accept every other rule and regulation without thinking. But here's an example. You have to be in good standing to get married in the Kingdom Hall, which means the elders sit you down and they talk to you as a couple. And it was so embarrassing because they talked to us when I married Troy about did we have sex before marriage? And we didn't, but it was still like so awkward for some dudes to ask you that. And then we had an engagement party where we played some hip hop, but what we did is we would play the instrumental version, so like no lyrics, and we actually got counseled on this. Not like we were going to play hip hop in the Kingdom Hall, but at the reception, the elder said we can't play the instrumental versions to the hip hop songs because people in their mind still sing along to the dirty lyrics. And it was just so embarrassing because we didn't even know this was coming. Also, in the previous episode when I talked about Justin and Christina, what was so surprising to me is that they were publicly reproved, but then were able to get married in the Kingdom Hall. I just want to clarify that because I don't think I explained it very well, because I always thought that once you were reproved as a couple because you had sex together, that you forfeit your right to get married in the Kingdom Hall. But then those two did. And honestly, I'm so glad that they were able to get married in the Kingdom Hall, but it was still like a surprise because I thought you couldn't. And really, the truth of this is there's so many rules about marriage and weddings in the Kingdom Hall, but it kind of depends on your elder body. It really does. Do they like you? Are you in favor? Are you like the golden child of the congregation? Because here's wedding number 1 we're going to talk about. And this was in Europe. A relative of mine, she was dating a worldly person who started a study with a local elder. And in Europe, it's not as strict, and this was like the 80s, so it was just like not as strict as it was here in the States. And so what they thought that they should do is we need to get him baptized as soon as possible, and you guys, you should get married. And so she was a baptized sister. He was not a baptized brother, but he was studying with an elder. And before he got baptized, they actually got married in the Kingdom Hall. And in the Elders book that is available for all to read online, I can link it below, because, us sisters, that was like the forbidden book for women. It's public. It's a PDF. You can read it. We always talk about how the truth is open for all and there's no secrets. So go ahead, read the Elders book. It's quite interesting, honestly. But it says that this is a no-no. So a baptized sister marrying an unbaptized brother in the Kingdom Hall with a talk from the elder is a no-no. However, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that's how I always thought it was, because you're not supposed to be even unevenly yoked. But the thing is this, they were kind of like the golden couple of the congregation, because the elder studied with him. So the elder was also the Kobe, or the presiding overseer at the time, and he made that decision that it was okay for them to get married in the Kingdom Hall, and so they did. I mean, it just really depends on who you know. And then there's another wedding that I'm going to talk about, and I've been meaning to talk about this one for a while. I felt so bad for this young couple. Beautiful couple, really good friends of mine. I was in the wedding, and they were like, I see her as my little sister almost, even though we're not related, and our grandmas were already really good friends. I just have so much love for her. She's a wonderful person. And her husband had gotten in a little bit of trouble here and there. He was a young kid. I mean, honestly, he was a little bit shady. But still, they were both baptized brother and sister who were about to get married. And I think there was already some stuff where the elders were talking to him. So I think they already kind of knew they weren't even going to try to marry in the Kingdom Hall. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to get married at the waterfront and have an elder or ministerial servant marry them, as you are highly encouraged to do as a Jehovah's Witness. Like, Jehovah's Witnesses see everyone worldly as bad association. So this is really what you should be doing. You should be, married before Jehovah by an elder or servant, so it's a spiritual wedding and whatever. But because the elders were kind of talking to him for some things, and I don't really even know what it was, but he wasn't disfellowshipped, he wasn't reproved, he was just, I guess, maybe I would say under surveillance, like they had their eye on him for some things, and I don't even really know what it was. Is that really a reason? This is what shows that the religion is so judgmental. They so judged him. They just deemed him as a person not worthy. And so they had asked a really good friend of theirs, who was a ministerial servant, to conduct their wedding talk and marry them outside at the waterfront. And the local elders in the congregation went up to that ministerial servant and said, if you marry them, you will lose all your privileges. Which puts this poor brother in such a tough spot, because how awkward. You mean, you just want to give this young couple who've been dating and engaged and have a whole wedding planned, you want to send them off with a blessing and love, right? And he was such a good friends with this couple. And for the elders to do this is just outright mean. It was outright mean. And then I also think, what else are you supposed to do? Aren't we one brotherhood? We are all Jehovah's Witnesses. And they aren't there for everybody. They're there for the elite. It was so clear and evident when Tony Morris gave that first, was it the annual meeting talk? And he talked about how sisters should really only be marrying elders and servants, and pretty much all the other brothers are trash. That was so offending to me, because I thought, how can you say something like that? Half the brothers sitting here aren't servants and elders, and how do they feel? It's this public shaming, and that is exactly how they viewed this brother. He was a Jehovah's Witness. She was marrying a brother. She was trying to do everything right, and here the elders were really trying to sabotage this marriage from the get-go. And then their good friend had to bow out and was like stressed about it because he still was going to come to the wedding. But you could tell there was such a damper on this wedding because it was such a witch hunt after this groom of hers. And so what happened is my grandpa was in the neighboring hall, and we were all friends with them. And he had such a sense of justice for those kind of things because, again, he wasn't a company man. I talked about that in a previous episode. I will link it. He wasn't a company man. He was definitely a spiritual man. And from a spiritual aspect, he just viewed like they were not behaving like Jesus. They were really just trying to throw a wench into this whole wedding. Is that wrench? Oh, wrench. Oh, gosh. And so what he did is he told my friend and her husband, he's like, I will marry you guys. Now, my grandpa was not even a servant or elder at this time, but it was outside. So, as a Jehovah's Witness, you're a minister, so you can marry people, especially in the state that we were in. And he told me too, he felt like, because I was in the wedding and Troy was in the wedding and our son was in the wedding, he felt like he was giving the wedding talk for us. And it made his heart so happy because he couldn't give our wedding talk because our wedding talk was in the Kingdom Hall and my grandpa was disgraced at the time. And it hurt so bad because he was such an excellent speaker. He couldn't give a wedding talk for us because he no longer was an elder or servant. So as just a brother, in quotation marks, you're not allowed to give the talk in the hall nor marry. I mean, in hindsight, maybe we should have married at a different venue, but you also are so brainwashed to think like the Kingdom Hall is like the place to get married and it's like so special and everything. And I feel sad that I didn't make that decision to include my grandpa more and have him give the talk and forget the venue of the Kingdom Hall. But again, I just was at this point where I wanted to do everything right before Jehovah. And sometimes doing everything right before Jehovah in this organization is kind of being cruel to other people. Because forget their dumb rules and regulations. I should have been kinder to my grandpa, who was so sad that he couldn't give our wedding talk. Like, I was his only granddaughter and always meant a lot to him. But alas, now he gave my friend's wedding talk outside at the waterfront. But I have to add to this that we were all terrified. There was such a damper on this wedding. So many people didn't show up. I remember seeing like her gift table was so little because so many people hadn't shown up, and she was giddy. She was so happy, but it kind of hurt because this is your community and your community is not there for you. And there was really nothing between the two of them that was like not supporting their marriage. She was marrying a Jehovah's Witness. She was marrying in the Lord. Shouldn't we all just be loving and graceful? And so my grandpa gave a beautiful talk for this couple and sent them off into marriage with his blessing. And we were all scared. We're like, the elders are going to come and going to like really talk to us, and we're all going to be in trouble for, doing what they forbade this other ministerial servant. And thankfully, this one slipped right by because I guess it was just not on the elders' radar. They never talked to anybody. But even that fear that you think, I'm going to be in trouble. How sad is that? You didn't even do anything wrong. You were kind. You're scared to get in trouble for being kind. And there were numerous situations like that where we did something that was kind, but we thought, maybe we're going to get in trouble for that. And one specific thing that I can think of is my grandpa, because he had immigrated, and thought like Armageddon is coming and all this. He actually had, because he did get an education, he had a nice savings cushion, thankfully, right? But then when they moved to the States, they didn't have health insurance. So Grandpa paid everything out of pocket with his savings. And my grandma, she ended up getting cancer. And Grandpa was so honest, he paid every bill with cash, which left him broke. And he really couldn't move back to Europe. His entire family was here. Here we're waiting for Armageddon, and you're getting older and older, and now you spent all your money. And we would say to him, just pay it off in small rates. Like, don't pay the whole bill, because the bills were pouring in for grandma's cancer. So by the time that he was in his late 80s, he didn't have health insurance, nor did he have savings left. And that was scary. It really was. So it's like, darn Jehovah's Witnesses for always dangling that carrot in front of you, and you thinking, oh, well, it's just around the corner. And then you're sitting there and you're depleted financially. It just sucks. So there was one sister in the congregation, and they made pretty good money, and she was very, very nice. And she felt bad for Grandpa. And so she slipped Grandpa a little bit of money to just help him out a little bit. Because honestly, he was like impoverished toward the end of his life. I mean, how sad is that to think about? And her brother was an elder in our congregation, and you wouldn't even believe it. He gave a local needs talk from the stage about how any financial support to individuals has to go through the elders, because really we should be supporting the kingdom ministry and like the society, and not support individuals. So this sister was sitting in the audience, mortified, feeling shamed that she helped Grandpa a little bit. And I just was like, I can't even believe this. This is infuriating how cruel that is. What is it the business of that elder to shame her like that, or to care about who she helps out, and that it always has to go through the elders? How controlling is that? Speak about like behavior control, and that we always have to donate through the society. Are you freaking kidding me? All that money that we're donating to the society is going to child abuse lawsuits. So I guess, yeah, keep paying the society, because these poor victims deserve that money. But they're not helping individual Jehovah's Witnesses. When did the organization itself ever send money to individuals, to a single mom who needs groceries, or an elderly couple who have given their whole life? They don't do that. They send it back to the Kingdom Hall, to the local congregation, and say, hey, you guys need to help, because they don't help. So now we've talked about the weddings, and here let's talk about the funerals in the Kingdom Hall. The Kingdom Hall can be used for funerals, and really, I've touched about this about like my grandpa's funeral. I guess I missed the memo on this. The funerals for Jehovah's Witnesses, which they call like a memorial service, is really not a remembrance of that person. It is a recruiting strategy, because you're getting worldly people to come into the Kingdom Hall. So hey, let's use that opportunity to recruit. So they spend a few minutes talking about the individual, and then they start talking about Jehovah and recruiting, and you're invited to come to the meetings. And I have to honestly say, I didn't really notice this as much when I was in Europe or like the 90s, but it just got, I guess, worse. And I noticed it because we had a lot of deaths in the last few years in my old hall, and you're like sitting there like, this is like the same rhetoric all the time. They're not really talking about this person who has died. But when my grandpa died, he was a lovely person, and we did want to make it about him. And so the elder who gave his talk was like kind of a young in the truth elder, and my grandpa was really close to him. So he, I guess, missed the memo too. He made that talk about my grandpa. It was beautiful. It was such a lovely talk. We didn't really recruit in it. We talked about his life and his love and how he loved Jehovah and all this stuff. Well, there was 2 elders after this memorial service, and like, just think, we had just lost like a precious family member, and plus I was going through all this stuff with Troy, and the elders knew that. But there were 2 elders in specific who would not talk to us anymore after this, and I felt like, okay, they're like soft shunning me, which like we didn't get in trouble or anything, but soft shunning is, you notice these people are treating you differently, but you can't really tell why. And I think it was not until I left and I started reading all these things about cults and Jehovah's Witnesses rules and regulations and things that I didn't even really know that were going on, that I realized that is what it was. I really think that these two elders felt like we were glorifying my grandpa. Imagine how absurd. And not glorifying Jehovah and recruiting. And plus these two elders were super culty. And just how sad is that? Like, you are supposed to shed all individuality as a Jehovah's Witness and conform. And the last wedding I want to talk about is of a couple that got married in my congregation up north. Her dad was a local elder and very, very strict. And then she married like the golden boy of the circuit, who was a ministerial servant, and everyone loved him and stuff. But she was, in a good way, kind of quirky. Like, I mean that in a good way. Like, she was just like her own individual. And we were sitting at the wedding, and they played Yanni music in the Kingdom Hall. And it was just kind of like, that's weird, because if you're a J-Dub, you know that's a no-no. No worldly music in the Kingdom Hall. And now that I'm out, I know that the Elder's Handbook actually says that you're supposed to use kingdom melodies. But of course, when your dad is an elder, you can bend the rules and do your own thing, kind of, which is exactly what happened in this case. I mean, here, I couldn't use my grandpa to give my wedding talk, and my friend, she couldn't use a ministerial servant at her outdoor wedding. That's no one's business. And if your dad's an elder and a prominent figure in the circuit, you can play Yanni worldly music at the Kingdom Hall, which really is crazy. You, of course, should be playing whatever music you want to at your wedding. I'm just saying, like, it's such a double standard that the J-Dubs have. And of course, they're full of double standards and hypocrisy. So she played Yanni music. And boy, worldly music in God's house is like a huge deal. And I do remember like publishers kind of talking behind the back, like, wow, can you believe she got away with doing that and stuff? But I do want to link a video in the credits here, because we do think, oh, you can only use spiritual music for spiritual activities. We know that famous Happy video at Bethel, I don't know if you guys remember this, was a huge scandal. Someone at Bethel took Pharrell's Happy song, 'cause I'm happy, come along, you know, that fun tune, and they made a Happy at Bethel video with it, which should be like the best advertisement for this place that could ever exist. They had to take it down from wherever, like YouTube. Why? Because apparently the governing body did not like it being out there. So they're trying to contain that video, but once it's out there, it's like toothpaste. Can't get it back now. Fast forward to, I think it's the 2016 convention. And remember, that's kind of like when all the video drama started. And it started that they would play on the monitors and appeal to your emotions, and it felt like propaganda. And the end video at that convention is the video where you see they're all meeting in paradise. It's super emotional. It really does make you cry when you see it. You're just like in tears. But you kind of realize, like, this song is so beautiful. And when I left, I realized that's not a Jehovah's Witness song at all. As a matter of fact, it's a song by a group that, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you would deem kind of demonic based on their pictures. So the art cover for the actual song that they played at the Jehovah's Witness convention with this drama, the cover is like an angel and a devil, and I, as a J-dub, I would be like, oh my gosh, that's so demonic. And to realize that they played this worldly music at a convention is mind-boggling. But here you can't use worldly music, quote unquote, in the Kingdom Hall for your wedding. Double standards for everything. So if you have a story about weddings and funerals, please share them with me. I would love to hear about it. And until next time, see you later.